Hey everyone, this is Chris. Welcome back to the channel, and this is your daily uncut news. So we're talking about the Fed. Of course we are, right? And as it turns out, it looks like economists are predicting that the interest rates are going to be above 4% through 2023. And take a look at this. This is interesting. So basically, they're surveyed 44 economists. This is the Financial Times, and saying, okay, where do you think interest rates are going to be? And basically what they're doing is they know that the Fed wants inflation to be at 2%. And so how long is it going to take to get there and sort of where interest rates will be? And so basically 66% of the people, so 2/3 of the economists they asked, said we think we're going to be at between 4 and 5 percentage. And then some 18% say 5 to 6 points, and 6 to 7%, or 6 to 7 points, however you want to say it, 2%. So not that many people think we're going to go that high. And then very few people think we're going to be, say, at 3 to 4. So we're looking at 4 and beyond, according to economists. I tend to think those are pretty reasonable numbers. Remember, if we're running inflation at, say, 8% right now, right? And let's say it comes down to 7 or whatever, to get to 2, we're still quite a ways away. And you can see, like, you can do some pretty basic math. You're saying, okay, if we want to go from 7 to 2, well, take 5% interest rates, and we'll try to get down that way. That's just a very basic way to look at it. But logically speaking, that certainly does make sense. And you can also make the case of like, okay, we're going to go to 6% inflation soon, but again, you're looking at 4 to 5 percentage in terms of interest rates. So what does that do when you have interest rates high for so long? Well, Goldman Sachs says, you know what, we're going to be cutting our forecast for 2023. Basically, the economy is not really going to grow that much. So they're predicting, what are they saying here? They're saying before it was 1.5 GDP growth in 2023. Now they're saying 1.1, so pretty flat. The other thing too you want to take a look at is unemployment will go up. I've mentioned this to you guys several times that if they're serious about fighting inflation, unemployment will go up. And no politician is going to say that. They're not going to say, hey, vote for me. I'm going to control inflation by making sure you get fired. No one's going to say that, but that is a high possibility. So ask the economists again, where do you think unemployment is going to be? They're looking at maybe, a little over half are saying between 5 and 6%. 23% are saying 6 to 7%. So we'll see. It depends. Most of the projections that I've been looking at is saying there will be a recession, but maybe not crazy deep. But nobody knows the future 100, right? You can kind of know trends from basically looking at their mathematical models, and also predicting trends in the future of what happened in the past. One thing that is actually really quite interesting is sort of why we're in Korea. I'm just keep telling you guys about this. The dollar is strong. So I say over and over again, if you want to travel, if you want to live abroad, the dollar is really, really strong right now. And it'll probably be like this for a while. I think it's pretty crazy. Like, here in Korea, people are talking like, okay, the dollar at, say, $1 to 1,300 Korean won is good. But it's like right now, it's like $1 to nearly 1,400 Korean won. So it's pretty high. And it's like this in several countries. And you can see here, the dollar is like up 14% on the year. It's just been on a tear. Also, too, regarding, like, even though dollar's on a tear in other countries, back in the USA, you may not feel like your dollar's going that far. In fact, you may feel like your dollar's going less far. That's because your energy bills are high, and I expect it to go back up. And we mentioned this several times, guys. You guys know this. It's not a shock. During winter, people need more energy, and we may face a shortage of energy and also to rising costs. So it could be real ugly this winter for some people, depending on which city you live in and what kind of power grid that you're facing. I remember we had power outages. I think it was in Texas. Was that 2 years ago already or 1 year? I can't remember, but I do remember that some of our utility companies need to invest in upgrading the grid. In terms of power shortage, it looks like they're having shortages in South Africa, which is really quite interesting. So for anyone who's watching the channel, if you're in South Africa now, I'd love to hear about this, but I guess they're doing blackouts, and it's actually really quite serious. We've heard of blackouts happening in China also. That was related to the drought, and actually South Africa had a drought too, and I think that was last year. I remember seeing that there was one lake that was like completely, how do you want to say it? Like the ground was sort of cracked, if you guys remember that. We talked about this last year on stream when we used to do that. It was fun. Not fun for the people in South Africa, but fun to talk about things around the world. And, like I said, if anyone can share more info on this, I'd love to hear more about this. But yeah, they're facing power shortages. There was an interesting thing too in the news about U.S.-China relations. And the basic gist of it is that this is from Bloomberg, and they're basically saying that there's going to be more nationalistic policies both in China and in the U.S. So a simple example is, U.S. is investing heavily in Intel, say, just for example, to build up, chip plants at home, or, say USA is investing heavily in, say, the EV companies, like just in tech, to build up, national brands at home, where, China's doing the same thing, building up their chip companies and also building up their auto companies, et cetera. So, one of the things that I've mentioned before on channel is when you have countries that specialize in certain things, it actually benefits all in terms of efficiency. The simple example I told you guys before is like, let's say one country makes a whole bunch of bananas, another country makes a bunch of strawberries. You do what you're good at, and then you trade, right? If this ends up being a thing to where the U.S. and the China are starting to try to cut relations, we're going to see some volatility in the market. And I know there are a lot of other YouTube channels that are really, really bullish on the Chinese stocks. I am not one of them. I'm always saying, yeah, if you want to do it, you can, but just be aware that it is a risky bet, and I wouldn't go too heavy in those. That's just my opinion on that. I also understand the fact of when people say, oh, when things are scary, that's when you should be buying up. I mean, I guess so, but I'd be more willing to take a risk on say, a risk on an American company over a Chinese company, if you guys know what I'm saying. And, I just think it's just too risky. So this was kind of interesting. Also, too, if you're looking for a job, it seems that the IRS is hiring. They're changing some of the ways that they're going to regulate tax laws. So basically, what my understanding of is that we're having a problem with the GDP growth, right? And also, too, we did a whole bunch of stimulus checks and we got deficit spending. So the IRS is going to try to look for more tax dollars to come on in, and they're going to need to hire people to do that. So if you are so inclined, there are jobs. As you guys know, we talked about there's unemployment going to be in some sectors. So IRS is one of the few places that will be hiring. And regardless to, crazy stuff going on in the world, I've heard about this before, but I didn't realize it was this bad. There is a coffee shortage, and there's actually two things going on right now. There's a coffee shortage, and we talked this before. There's an Adderall shortage. So I think we're all seeking some stimulants, right, to get us going. But regarding the coffee thing, though, I guess there's increased demand, and they've had a problem with weather down in South America, and so this is Brazil, of course. But there are multiple places that make coffee. In fact. If you guys know that we used to live in Vietnam, and I'm telling you, Vietnamese coffee is legit. I think once that catches on in USA, people will really drink it. But I am well aware that Starbucks is certainly doing everything they can to block some of the Vietnamese companies from coming. But I'm just telling you, Vietnamese coffee is really, really good, and they produce coffee there. So that might be a big boost for Vietnamese coffee, perhaps, that Brazil is struggling. But you may see. It's funny, you see increased prices at the pump, and you may see increased prices at the bistro, right? So that is the thing, shortage. And the Adderall thing, basically, if you guys don't know the story, the basic gist of it is that it was really easy to get prescriptions for Adderall, which is your ADHD medicine. And then someone was right in the comments, which I don't have any firsthand knowledge, but I'll trust what people write in comments because it makes sense to me that I guess people were just getting as much stuff as they could of this stuff and then selling it on college campuses. So, that's very much American. Is use whatever you can, and basically instead of a lemonade stand on the corner, you're having an Adderall stand on the corner, right? Also, too, in terms of opportunity, I've mentioned this before several times, starting last year. I'm a big fan of Lockheed Martin, but it's not just Lockheed Martin. There's a lot of going to be opportunity in the space industry going forward. And in fact, this was actually really interesting. The Financial Times ran an article where they were talking about how the International Space Station, the one is there's concerns that Russia will pull out because if you guys can look at the diagram here, the blue parts of what the parts basically that the U.S. has built, and then the red parts is Russia. So you can see Russia has quite a bit of the International Space Station, as part of them, and it's expensive to run this thing. So if Russia pulls out, it's going to be way more burden, I guess you could call it, on the Americans, and we'll see if the Chinese, decide to put more money in this thing. But it's interesting because there's multiple companies that are trying to get essentially NASA/government contracts. So Bezos, Blue Origin's in here, Sierra Space, Northrop Grumman, Axiom Space, Lockheed Martin, and NanoRacks. So I'm a big LMT fan, but I could see people going Northrop Grumman. I don't know who's going to get the contracts, but it's worth big money. They were saying by 2040 it's like a $1 trillion market, and I can't remember what the other number was. It was really big. I think it was something like whichever one of these companies got the deal. Yeah, here it is right here. Whoever selected, so NASA's going to select one of these companies by like 2025, and then that'll be $1 billion in revenue annually. which is big money, right? $1 billion contract is nothing to sneeze at. So do keep an eye on that kind of stuff. Also here locally in Asia, you guys may not know, we're facing a typhoon. So we're in Busan, Korea. We went out to dinner today. It was raining and windy. It's still windy right now. You probably can't hear the storm, but we actually tried to batten down all the stuff. And true story, where our air conditioning is, it's like I'm gonna say there's like a door there that always stays open, and we couldn't figure out how to close it. We were just trying to do that. But they're facing evacuations in Japan, so we're just a stone's throw from Japan, actually a ferry ride from Japan, and it's like millions of people are told to evacuate. So we'll see what happens with that. There was a typhoon that came earlier that passed through Korea, didn't hit us. As hard as people had expected, but this one sounds really quite serious, and you guys know this. Water damage and storm damage is nothing to take lightly. So hopefully everyone will stay safe there. And also speaking of Asia, and speaking of Korea, we're saying, Do Kwon, please come home. So if you don't know, this is the Terra Luna dude. He was hanging out in Singapore, but I told you guys it was yesterday. I said that Korea was saying, dude, come home. And they thought he was in Singapore, and I specifically said that he may not be there. And as it turns out, he's not there. So I don't have any connections of where he might be, but I just had a feeling when they say he might be in Singapore that this guy could be anywhere. Because I think for these kind of people, I think their lives are in danger. To be perfectly frank, I'm sure there's a lot of people after this guy. Not just the Korean government. So Do Kwon, if you're listening, you got a lot of splaining to do. and he's tweeting out, "Oh, I'm not on the run, and I'm fine, and everything's okay." But pay no attention to that. I think he's on the run, I'm sure. And the last thing, talking about criminals and being on the run, Grand Theft Auto GTA 6. I guess some game footage leaked out on this thing. So if you've seen the new gameplay footage, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. But this is going to be a big problem going forward for video game companies. Everyone's working at home and stuff like that, right? And so there's just video files and stuff all going around the internet. And when you're leaking game footage, I mean, I guess you're still a couple years away from the official launch of this thing. And one of the things that I think is interesting that's been happening, we've talked about before on this channel, to where, remember we've talked about shrinkflation, essentially paying more money for less good of a product. And video games is guilty of that, where they release, products that basically aren't ready, but they need to start making money on this thing. And so, people oftentimes when you see like early game footage, it's not going to be what the final game product is, but people are already examining it, being critical of this stuff. And I'm sure it's not fun to be over at Rockstar right now and trying to explain what happened. So anyway, that's what's up. I'd love to hear your thoughts on anything that we talked about today. My opinion on terms of the markets and the economy and stuff like that is, I'm leaning towards more bearish. I can't predict if we're going to have crash or not, right? But I just don't see any reason at this point why we would like rebound like crazy like we did, in 2020. A lot of kids out there who are new to the market, that's all the only market they've ever seen. The thing is, remember, the Fed is not your friend this time. They're not going to be giving you stimmy checks and printing out money. In fact, they're raising interest rates and trying to slow down the economy. So it makes it tough for stocks and companies, and this is sort of why you pay attention to news and figure out where the opportunities are. I guess if I was just looking at the news today, I'd be like, okay, your defense contracts, your space contracts, and any company that makes Adderall, I guess, right? So, I think coffee will struggle. Because if they have to pay more for coffee, because if like for example like Starbucks, if they have to pay more for the coffee coming in and they don't have enough coffee because there's a shortage, they're going to struggle as well. But this is the challenge of the markets, and one of the things I always recommend you guys is understand that life does go on. We're all going to be okay, and eventually you're going to be playing Grand Theft Auto 6, and you're going to be fine. And Do Kwon will be captured, so don't worry about that. So anyway, thanks everyone for watching, and I'll catch you next video.